Welcome to this week's episode of On Record PR. You are here with your hosts, Jennifer Simpson Carr and Gina Rubel. Hi, Gina.
Hello, Jennifer.
I was thinking about you as I was driving to school this morning because I turned to my daughter and said, "Oh, it's warm today." And then I saw that it was 28 degrees and realized that when it's been in the single digits, 28 feels warmish.
It's so funny. I had the same conversation at my biannual dentist cleaning appointment, and I went without a jacket. And I'm like, oh, it's balmy today.
Yeah. So
What a concept. So yeah, so listeners, it is the dead of winter in the Pennsylvania, New Jersey areas.
So, Gina, we are 6 weeks into the new year, which is hard to believe. And during those 6 weeks, there have been so many attention-grabbing headlines. Honestly, too many to get into, but a couple that did catch my attention were one, and you said it at some point last year when all of the firms that started to capitulate after the executive orders, but we are seeing what you had said at the time was that these firms that are capitulating must have something to hide. And so we're starting to see that play out in many headlines, um, across the legal publications.
We certainly are. And it's the number one headline right now. So
Yeah.
it's interesting.
And kind of hard to grapple with. I'm sure many listeners are feeling that as well. And then I feel like we need to get you a crystal ball because also we recorded our M&A communication episode, released it, and then within a few days, started to see headlines around communication breakdowns that actually are pretty significantly impacting a large merger in our industry.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot coming at us and a lot to think about. But today, what we're going to talk about is the top 3 issues that we are seeing as an agency and as an international faculty that are top of mind in the legal market and what they mean for law firm leadership. And I use the word today intentionally because, as we know, we're recording this to release on Monday and things can change between now and then. So the top 3 things that we are seeing are pricing power, fragmented client loyalty, and the AI credibility gap. Gina, let's start with pricing. Earlier this month, Reuters published an article about top US litigators at Sussman Godfrey charging up to $4,000 per hour. We all agreed, a shocking number to read, but not really a surprising one.
I hesitate because I was surprised. That's the first time I've ever seen a number that high in hourly billing. And it did surprise me. So, and I think that's probably because, Jennifer, it's just, I don't know a whole lot of GCs that are going to pay that. But it does grab your attention, and it fits with what we're seeing across the market. Demand is healthy and it continues to rise. But what's really happening is what we call selective pricing power. And we've talked about this before. Clients are willing to pay an extraordinary amount of money and extraordinary rates when the work is high stakes, highly differentiated, not just slightly differentiated, when it's mission critical, and when it's that kind of bet the company work that we're talking about. When that outcome truly matters, the price becomes secondary to things like expertise, judgment, speed. And what I mean by speed is it's not just that they have the expertise, they can get to it quickly because they have the expertise. Similar to us, when we are hired to do litigation comms, we're so well versed in it that we don't have to come up to speed. And that idea of risk mitigation. We're also seeing something very different on the other end of the spectrum because clients are shifting routine or operational matters elsewhere. So in-house teams are managing costs very aggressively, And, law firms are as well, which is important to be mindful of. We saw a lot of coverage last fall, 2025, about generative AI tools geared toward the role of in-house counsel and how in-house lawyers have shared real-world examples of using those tools. Like, I think one is called, Jennifer, you might know better, GCAI.
Mhm.
And that's used to create first drafts and reduce that external spend on lower value work. So just last month, Business Insider, and I think you shared this article with me, was published, and I'm reading this, why AI is becoming the hottest cost-cutting tool in corporate legal departments. So I hope we have a link to that we can share in our show notes.
We do.
So pricing power isn't universal, it's concentrated. Premium work is being protected and everything else is being reevaluated. I expect that that's going to continue on both sides.
So what I'm hearing is that law firm leaders can't assume pricing power. They really have to earn it and they have to articulate it. So Gina, what would you say are the key considerations for firms that can sustain premium pricing power?
They're crystal clear. They're differentiated. It's happening where the stakes justify the investment and the outcomes they want are consistently delivered. So a firm has to be able to show those three things, not just say those three things. So if your value proposition sounds like everyone else's, pricing power erodes quickly. It's important to note that leadership teams should be asking, where do you truly command premium pricing? And are we showing up in the way that we need to show up in the market? And Jennifer, this is no different than what we talk about here at Furia Rubel. There are certain areas where when we're doing crisis communications, when we're doing litigation comms, when we're working on Bet the Company, we certainly command premium pricing because of the way we do it, the why we do it, and the how we do it.
And it's a really good test and question, are we showing up that way in the market for law firm leaders? Because that's really the key, is are we showing up in that way?
Right.
So let's talk about topic number 2, which is fragmented client loyalty. We are seeing that client loyalty is thinner than many firms assume. At the CMBDO forum in January, they shared results of client interviews that Reuters took a survey and shared client interviews of law firm clients. And the survey showed that only 23% of external spend goes to a client's most used firm. That felt low to me. I'm interested in your reaction. Primary firms are used for fewer than 3 work types, and only 15% plan to increase usage of that firm this year. So what do you think, Gina?
Well, it's interesting, Jen. I'm going to go back to that number. Only 23% of external spend goes to a client's most used firm. That doesn't surprise me. And the reason is that most used firm may be great with standard work, but then and think about it this way, what if that firm doesn't have intellectual property practice group? So that type of work is going to go to an intellectual property law firm. When it's a matter that may be have a higher level of risk, for example, let's say lawyer acting badly, they might go to an external firm that has a lot of experience dealing with high profile litigation related to employment. So it's really important to understand that, and I've used this example all the time, Jen, since I started the company almost 25 years ago. If you were to break your hand, you fall on all of this wonderful ice we've been dealing with for months now. You break your hand, you don't go to your primary care physician for your hand. You're going to go to an orthopedic specialist. When you get to the orthopedic specialist, you're more likely than not going to ask for a hand and wrist specialist, someone who specializes in those several, however many bones there are in the hand. I'm not going to profess to know anatomy that well, but it's important to understand that firms become known for certain areas, and that's where the fragmentation comes in, and clients are spreading the work out widely. Now, 5 years ago or 6 years ago, even you and I, or you actually interviewed someone on our podcast about how firms were consolidating, and now we're seeing fragmentation again.
Mhm.
And they're unbundling these services and they're hedging risks across providers. This makes growth feel harder for many firms, even when demand is strong, but it also gives them an opportunity to differentiate where they have their best work, and they can still recover costs that way. And that we know that winning new work is still difficult, but a new normal is that an expanding share of wallet may even be more challenging. So firms can't rely on assuming loyalty.
Mhm.
They have to be upfront about where their, and I put in quotes and air quotes, expertise really lies.
Mhm.
Those firms that say we do everything for everyone, that's okay. And that's going to work for the small businesses. Maybe it's not going to work for your large corporate clients. So they have to show up with cross practice and they have to connect the dots for their clients, because if they don't, they're not going to get that work.
So, from a communication standpoint, this is critical. If only 23% of a client's spend goes to a primary firm, then being the quote most used doesn't mean being indispensable.
They are definitely not synonymous. The law firm leaders, practice group leaders, and the originators of that business need to be asking if their clients understand the full scope of work that the firm has. Are we positioned as a business partner or as a task-based provider? And are our teams aligned in how they all talk about, when I say they, the different teams within your firm talk about the firm's capabilities? And this is nothing different than what legal marketers have been saying for decades, by the way. And we're trying to get lawyers to hear this because oftentimes, and rightfully so, they're so engrossed in the work they do every day that they don't even realize, especially the larger the firm, the less they realize how many other capabilities the firm has. But
Mhm.
that fragmentation requires intentional relationship expansion. It doesn't happen passively.
Yes, and that's a great point because I would put money on the fact that every listener of this episode has received an email that has said, "Does anyone in the firm know an attorney that does X?" And the firm itself actually does that work.
Before we go
So,
to our sponsor message,
yes.
Jennifer, I just have to say, I've been around long enough that we used to say, do we know anybody who does this in Martindale Hubble? And when I referred to Martindale Hubble, it was the printed version.
Hmm.
So, which doesn't exist anymore. And now it is. Does anybody do this in our firm?
So let's pause here for that sponsor message. And when we get back, we will tackle number 3, which is the AI credibility gap.
This episode is brought to you by Furia Rubel Communications, a public relations and marketing agency serving law firms and businesses worldwide. With an expert team positioned throughout the U.S. and supported by an international faculty, Furia Rubel enhances our clients' brands through integrated communications by providing expert guidance in crisis management and high-profile litigation, protecting brand and reputation, and supporting internal marketing teams. To learn more, visit furiarubel.com.
Gina, we are back from our sponsor message, and let's tackle number 3, which is the AI credibility gap. In-house counsel are looking for differentiation here. They have been asking for it for years now. I can remember you and I sitting at Whipple several years ago, not just last year or the year before, but years ago, listening to in-house counsel and law firms talk about piloting programs for technology that was new and innovative at the time. But Fast forward to today, many clients say that they still don't see meaningful differences in this area among law firms.
I'm sighing. It might be the most urgent issue facing law firms right now. And I say urgent in two ways. One, on the differentiator side, and two, on the side of figuring out how firms are going to move forward. Because, and Jennifer, I'm not going to name any firms, but just this week, one of the top 10 firms in the AmLaw list announced a very large layoff and blamed it on AI. And I'm going to say that because I assume that's true, but it's also bringing to fruition a fear that many in the industry have had. So it is really, truly one of the most urgent issues facing law firms. Clients consistently say that AI implementation and cost efficiencies are going to differentiate those firms, but only a small percentage rate their primary firm highly for effective AI use. And I believe I got that data from you from the Reuters conference you attended. And this is a really big credibility gap. Clients just don't want to hear that you have AI. That doesn't mean anything. They want to know what's your clear roadmap. What are your governance and security procedures? How are you seeking clarity? What's your proof of efficiency? How are you using it to collaborate? And where is the measurable value? And these are questions we're being asked too. So again, this isn't just legal. This is every professional service provider out there. But it is making a huge difference in the legal space. And this is where many firms are falling short, not because they lack the tools, but because they lack consistent messaging. You know, and innovation is cultural. It's really who your firm is. And it's not just a piece of technology. And again, we see this every day, and it's not easy. I'm not going to begin to say it's easy. We're trying to implement 2 new tools right now, and the learning gap is huge. And it requires a lot of investment, but firms have to make it.
And I continue to have conversations with people who are whose firms are on varying spectrums or varying parts of the scale, right? Their firms are using it, not using it, don't want anything to do with it. And again, if we think back to years ago, the gap between those at least trying it and those who have a hard and fast no continues to grow because the learning gap has a long runway. You have to try and test and reinvent and come back and test more. So the longer that firms wait to take that first step, the further it feels like they are behind. And I appreciate your point about culture because it is a cultural issue and it happens through strong change management. It's not just simply buying a piece of technology, installing it, or giving people access to it, and then assuming that everything will change. Firms need alignment.
Jennifer, I know you see me like kind of smirking and laughing, and you're like, what is going through her head? But I can't help but think back to, oh gosh, it had to be 20 years ago now, when I was giving a CLE and I said, it is malpractice if you don't know how to at least read what your clients are posting on social media. Okay, I did this program 20 years ago about the Wild West of social media. We're still training lawyers on how to use LinkedIn. I go silent with that because LinkedIn in and of itself is a very important tool. And it's not what we would call AI. And then you wonder why firms can't get it together and get up to speed with and implement these tools that are changing the industry. I mean, I just said to you yesterday, if I look up a candidate who wants to work here and they don't have a complete LinkedIn profile, including a headshot and everything else, then they've already missed the boat, right? So there's the opportunity cost. And I'm using that as just this tiny little example. And then we're talking about generative AI, which is so much bigger than LinkedIn. So if partners, pricing teams, IT, marketing, and everyone aren't articulating clearly how AI supports client outcomes, where efficiency is gained, and how security and risks are managed, then they're not getting that work. That is an opportunity cost. And every partner needs to answer those questions succinctly, not differently, so that the clients can assume certainty and have confidence, not eroded a confidence. That's where the differentiation lies. And every partner needs to know those questions inside out and backwards, especially the relationship partners. It's not an option, bottom line.
And it's communication strategy and tactic that not only meets the needs of the AI piece, but also the differentiation. This goes back to something that has been a challenge at law firms well before technology was in the mix. I mean, really that long ago, is that every time you asked a partner at the firm about the firm, you'd get, if you asked 20 partners, you'd get 20 different answers. So now that firms have, we see firms have unified that messaging on a firm-wide front, at least about who they are and what they do. That same process also needs to happen around technology and the value that it brings to your firm and to your clients.
Absolutely.
So we're 6 weeks in, and there is a lot to think about. We've given our listeners 3 key areas that we have seen, be most top of mind and kind of really trickle through all of the conversations that we're having. I want to thank our listeners for tuning in today. If on-record PR is the way that you stay informed, please consider leaving a review on Apple Podcasts, share the show with a friend or colleague, and continue to reach out to us at podcast@onrecordpr.com with your feedback, your thoughts, your topic ideas. And we will see you for our next episode, TBD on the topic, but I am sure that there will be plenty of things to choose from.
Oh, I have a topic, Jennifer. I have a topic.
Do you want to share it now, or do you want to keep our listeners?
I think we'll keep everybody in suspense.
Okay.
in suspense. There you go. Tripping over the words again. Forgive me, people. It has been a long week and it's only Wednesday. To Monday when you listen, though.
Yeah. All right. Have a good day.
You too, Jen.
On Record PR is produced by Jennifer Simpson Carr and Matt Henderson, with support from the team at Rubel Communications. This episode is edited by Isabel Horan and Christian Yamula. Visit www.onrecordpr.com for resources and more information.